Welcome back to Focus Unleashed. This is episode 7, and today we're stepping into one of the most important parts of this entire journey: identity. Because at some point, you have to stop trying to change your life and start becoming the person who actually lives that life. So buckle up and get ready. Let's get into it. You ready? All right, here we go. Last week, we talked about habits and how you don't fall to your goals, you fall to your habits. But here's a deeper truth: you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your identity. And your habits are just the daily proof of who you believe you are. Identity is the internal thermostat. You can crank it up when the motivation hits, and it'll last for a little while, but eventually you settle back to who you believe you are. You felt this and probably didn't even realize what was going on. Yes, there's adversity, and yes, there are things that are never easy. But most of the time, when we can't take that next step to reaching our goals and putting ourselves in a position to be successful, it's because we fall back into the identity we have instead of moving to who we truly want to be. I can speak from experience, especially somebody who said that they wanted to be a motivational speaker, someone who wanted to help people. If you would have asked me last year what I was doing to create that identity, I would have told you that I was talking to a handful of my clients and really working with them, trying to motivate them, giving them advice, giving them perspective that I have come up with, which is the basis of Focus Unleashed. But how does that truly create the motivator, the motivational speaker, and the influence that I want to provide? I wasn't taking that step. I was living in the same identity, the same habits, and hoping and wishing that that would then turn into something instead of putting myself in a position to create a new identity that creates the opportunities. And that's what this podcast is based on. It's what it was built on. The new identity, putting myself out there, giving me more opportunity to reach more people, and in the process, possibly helping more people, and becoming the speaker, motivator that I wanted to be. So today, we're going to shift that belief. And that is what we're focusing on in this episode. So right now, if you're somebody who has goals and you've had goals in the past and you didn't quite get there, but this year is going to be different, you're in an identity gap. There are two versions of you right now. The version who's been going through the motions, and the version who finally realizes the old ways haven't worked and is ready to take a different approach. Between those two versions is the identity gap. This is the moment where you stop repeating the same patterns and start asking the real questions. So when you trying to take that step in creating the new identity of the person who is going to be successful in 2026, there's some questions that you need to ask yourself. One of them is, who is this person who actually reaches goals in 2026? And when you ask that question, you need to think about their qualities, their standards, what they no longer tolerate, how they show up when no one's watching, and what they consistently prioritize. Another question you need to ask, what do they do differently? I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is that they need to do just a little bit extra than what they're doing now. And I don't think that is the way. You have to do things differently and be willing to do things differently. So you need to ask, what habits are automatic for them? What habits they've eliminated? Remember, this process is going to take sacrifice. It always takes sacrifice. So what habits they've eliminated? How they respond to pressure. There's always going to be adversity. There's always going to be things that are going to get in your way. How are you going to respond to that? And how they manage their time. What decisions they make quickly and confidently. And I want you to think about that one just a little bit, because it's quickly and confidently. It's not right or wrong. When you're on this journey, sometimes you have to make a decision in a split second, whether to take an opportunity or not take an opportunity. Don't think of it in terms of right or wrong, because every decision you make has a right and it has a wrong, but it's how you approach it which makes it a good decision or a bad decision. So don't concentrate so much on, is it a good decision or a bad decision? Concentrate on, can I make this decision quickly and confidently? The next question you need to ask yourself is, what do they refuse to tolerate? If you look at the version of you now, can you write down things that you currently tolerate that you need to change? Think about excuses, inconsistency, distractions, low standards, environments that drain them, people who do not respect their boundaries. Thinking about the current version of you, do you have issues with any of those? Because I guarantee if you have issues with those, you have to change that in order to create your new identity. Then ask yourself, what do they consistently show up for? Their routines, their health, their goals, their commitments, their personal growth, their non negotiables. These are things that are required for you to be successful. It's not just about doing things when it's convenient, when you want to, when you feel like it. It's showing up and doing the things necessary all the time. And I'm not saying every day, I'm just saying all the time. Every time you're meant to show up for it, you do it. No questions asked. You don't let distractions, excuses, and all the things that you need to change get in your way. You show up. And then you need to ask, what identity do they operate from every single day? And that's what I mean by showing up. Are they disciplined or reactive? Are they intentional or drifting? Are they proactive or waiting for motivation? A builder or just a talker? Someone who executes, we talked about execution last week, or someone who just plans? This is where the shift happens. When you can start to break down the things that you need to change, that's when you can say that you're ready to make the change. When you can be 100% honest with yourself, identify the issues that you've had in the past, and be willing to change them, this is when the shift happens. Because once you see that your old identity produced your old results, you stop blaming the goal. You stop blaming friends. You stop blaming circumstances. And you start upgrading the identity behind the goal. This is evolution. This is the turning point. This is where you stop trying and start becoming. And that is important because when you build this identity, you can't do it by pure luck or accident. So you have to know what you need to change in order to create this identity, because identity is built by repetition. The things you repeatedly do and the things you repeatedly say create the identity you live from. Now think about that for a second. Think about what you've said and what you've repeatedly done in the past. When things get hard, you do what? When you're not motivated, you do what? When you're tired, what do you constantly say to yourself? When you're unsure, what do you constantly say to yourself? When you think about the current version of you, start with this. What are your thoughts? What are your self-talk? Because those patterns are the anchors holding your current identity in place. If you are tired, yes, you're physically tired. I get that. I understand that. I am tired a lot of the time too. But I notice that in starting my day, If I constantly repeat to myself, oh, I'm tired. Oh my gosh, I'm tired. I am tired. Then I feel like I get more tired as the day goes on. If I tell myself, hey, you're tired, but you got this, I seem to pick up a little bit of steam. It creates an energy boost to where I'm not thinking about how tired I am. I'm more focused on what I need to accomplish. And then once I accomplish those things, if I'm still tired, I can lay down and take a little nap, get some recovery, and then jump back in my day. So self talk and your thoughts are very important to your identity. And anchors matter. If you want a new identity, you have to change the anchors. You have to change what you repeat because anchors give you something solid to come back to. And repetition turns those anchors into who you become. So let's break down the three identity anchors. One is language, because repetition creates belief. Your words shape your identity, but it's not a one time shift. It's the repetition of new language that rewires how you see yourself. Every time you say, I'm becoming, I'm the type of person who I show up for myself, you're casting a vote for the identity you want. Repetition turns words into belief, and belief starts to become the path to the identity you want to achieve. You have to start talking to yourself as a successful person. And successful people do not make excuses. They don't focus on the negative. They turn negatives into opportunities. They are constantly telling themselves they can be better. They will do better. This is not the end. This is the beginning. Those type of thoughts, those type of self-talk are what will help you create the identity that you're trying to get into so that you can be successful this year. The second anchor is environment because repetition creates normalcy. Your environment shapes you through exposure. The more you repeatedly place yourself in an environment that matches your future identity, the more that identity becomes your normal. I tell people as a personal trainer all the time, I tell them if you want to be a person that goes to the gym, then start going to the gym. Even if it's, I'm going to drive to the gym, I'm going to walk through the door, and even if it's, I'm going to step on the treadmill just for 2 minutes, and that will be my day. If you consistently do that, 2 minutes will turn into 10, 10 will turn into 15, 15 will turn into 20, and so on, because you are placing yourself in the environment in which you want to be in. And once you're there, the thought process goes from, I don't want to be here to I'm already here. I might as well. Right? But if you don't ever place yourself in that environment, then you don't create that normalcy. So think about what you need to repeat to create normalcy. Do you need a clean space, clean calendar, aligned people, aligned habits? Repetition makes your environment feel like home, and your identity adapts to match it. So make sure you immerse yourself in places, around people, in your own habits. Because once you get comfortable around an environment, around a certain group of people, even in your habits, it becomes normal and that feels comfortable. Right now, in the beginning, it won't feel comfortable because it's new. So you have to force yourself into those situations, even if it's in small doses. Because as you create more momentum, you create the small wins, even in small doses. You then start to create that identity. And then that identity feels more comfortable and you take more action. Number three, the third anchor is evidence because repetition creates proof. Every small win is a vote, but it's the repetition of those wins that builds the identity. What I just talked about. One aligned action is good. 10 aligned actions is momentum. 100 aligned actions is identity. Repetition turns effort into evidence. Evidence turns evidence into belief. Belief turns belief into identity. What we repeatedly tell ourselves, the habits that we create, the people that we talk to, the environments that we immerse ourselves in. Once we start stacking those little wins and we start doing that on a consistent basis, that becomes evidence that you are starting to become the person that you want to believe. You want to be. As you start to build that evidence, you start to feel it. You start to believe it. I can be this person. I will be successful. I'm moving forward. I'm not standing still. Things that used to get in my way are not getting in my way. You start to believe it. And then when you start to believe it, it starts to become who you are. And as you start to become that person, you transform into a person who looks back and says, I'm not who I used to be. I'm not scared. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not anxious. I haven't even had the thought that this could not work. I haven't told myself not to do this. I haven't talked myself out of doing what I'm currently doing. This is new. I believe this can work. This is who I am. So as we're going through this and you're listening to this and you're starting to really feel it, because I'm getting excited about it as I'm talking about it, let's do a little exercise. We're going to call this the identity audit. What I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes just for a moment. Picture the version of you who reaches your 2026 success. Think about, how do they wake up? How do they speak to themselves? How do they handle pressure? What do they say no to? What do they say yes to? What habits are automatic for them? Now, after you thought about that for a little bit, ask yourself, what's one behavior I can start today that aligns with that identity? I don't want you to think about 10. I don't want you to think about 5. Think about 1. The person and the identity that you're trying to create. What is one habit that you can change today? What is one thing you can shift today to start to create that identity? Because identity is built through alignment, not overwhelm. So we're not going to overwhelm ourselves with, we need to change everything today. We're going to start with one thing today. And we're going to build on that this week. And then once we've mastered that, then you can move on to the next thing. So make a list of the things that this person who is successful in 2026 does, and then attack it one thing at a time. Change one thing and then move on. Because at this point, you're making a choice. Becoming is not perfection. It's a choice. And every day, you're choosing between two identities. The identity you've been living in, or the identity you're ready to grow into. Let's be honest. You can stay where you are with the same anchors, the same habits, the same self-talk, the same environment, the same patterns you built your current identity on. You can stay there, be comfortable, but I can almost guarantee, that you won't be as successful as you possibly could be in 2026. Because this old identity will let you be comfortable with the smallest amount of success. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if it's not doing exactly what you want to do, and you're going to be upset about it, then there is something wrong with that. So you can do that, or you can take a step. Even a small one, toward that identity you actually want. A new identity requires new anchors, new language, new environments, new evidence, new habits. You don't have to become the final version of yourself today. It's not a requirement. But you do have to choose which identity you're feeding, because every action you take is a vote for your old identity or a vote for the new one. And the identity you feed the most becomes the identity you live from. I want you to think about that. What you feed the most is where you will live from. So if you feed excuses, you feed inconsistency, you feed bad habits, that's where you will live from. But if you start to feed consistency, new habits, you'll start to see progress to where you want to be. So this is the moment. This is the fork in the road. Stay the same or step into who you are becoming. And I know that sounds very simple. And you may say, if it was that simple, then why is it so hard? Because it's a choice that requires you to do more than what you're currently doing. And that's a choice to take on more work, be more mindful, use your time better, stop watching so much TV, start focusing on your health. And those decisions, while they are very good decisions, it means that it's going to take more work. And a lot of times, we don't want the extra work. We just want things to work out without doing the work. So you have to make that decision. You have to make that choice. And that time is now. We're still in the early part of the year. So every decision we make towards reaching our goals right now puts us in a position to be successful. The longer we wait or we don't make those quick and intentional decisions, puts us in a position to where we will regret not making those choices. So as we close today, let's remember, your goals are the destination. Your habits are the vehicle, but your identity, that's the engine. This week is about stepping into the identity that matches the life you're building. So if you want it, let's go get it. If we're going to go get it, let's start stepping into that identity that matches what we want so that we can start to build it. Not someday, not when you feel ready, now. Right? We're taking action. Quick and intentional decision making starts today. And the first choice is taking that step to the identity of the person who is successful in 2026. This is Focus Unleashed. Let's become the person who wins. And as always, stay focused and be ready to unleash it.